Hello, this is Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, cattle producers will recall that during the mid-2000s, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, was on a mission. That mission was to establish a national animal identification system called NAIS, or NAIS. And that system would require every head of livestock, including chickens, hogs, cattle, and horses, to be individually identified, preferably with an electronic ear tag, and every livestock producer would have to register with the federal government their premises where their livestock are kept and report to the government every time they move those livestock. It was a huge fight to protect U.S. cattle producers from such government overreach, but RCAF USA and several other organizations said no way would we stand for this. And we won, sort of. In 2013, the USDA issued a new regulation called the Traceability of Livestock Moving Interstate, and it required all adult cattle shipped in interstate commerce, such as crossing a state line, to be officially identified by the producer. So this new regulation represented a substantial watering down of what the USDA really wanted. And that goes to show you that if there are enough people organized and standing together, they can indeed make a difference. So the USDA gave up on its plan to ear tag chickens, gave up on requiring cattle of all ages to be identified, and they gave up on mandating radio frequency identification, or RFID ear tags, along with their plan to require every cattle producer to register their premises. Now, we consider this a victory, particularly because the government finally acknowledged that they only had jurisdiction over interstate commerce, and therefore they couldn't force producers to participate in their identification scheme unless the producer transported their cattle across state lines. We also liked that it only applied to adult cattle, and importantly, that it prohibited states from mandating that cattle entering their jurisdictions be ear tagged with RFID ear tags. It also made clear that cattle producers did not have to register their premises. The new regulation also offered flexibility. It recognized as official identification devices such methods as branding, tattoos, metal ear tags, back tags, and group lot identification. And since 2013, the U.S. cattle industry has been complying with this new regulation, and there's not been a lot of complaints that we've heard. But behind the scenes, the USDA went right back to work to resurrect what it originally wanted under the NAIS proposal. The USDA wanted cattle producers to identify their cattle with RFID ear tags and nothing else. To accomplish this, the USDA formed advisory committees made up of ear tag companies that stand to make windfall profits from such a mandate. Also on the committees were federal and state animal health officials. Now, to no one's surprise, the USDA's advisory committees recommended the phase-out of all forms of identification except the RFID, and that all producers should be required to register their premises. So in April of this year, the Secretary of Agriculture acted on these recommendations and issued a public notice stating that at the end of 2019, the government will no longer issue metal ear tags, and beginning January of 2023, all cattle moving interstate would need to be affixed with an RFID ear tag, and all producers who apply RFID ear tags would have to register their premises. Now, wait a minute. The government cannot issue a mandate that forces cattle producers to incur substantial costs unless the government first follows the law by initiating a notice and comment rulemaking that allows affected individuals to express their concerns. The Secretary of Agriculture did not do this, and surprisingly, no one representing the cattle industry was saying a word, except, that is, for RCAF USA. On October 4th of 2019, RCAF USA and 4 of its members filed a lawsuit in federal district court asking it to declare the Secretary's mandate unlawful and to grant us an injunction against the RFID mandate. The attorney representing us is Harriet Hageman, Senior Litigation Counsel for the New Civil Liberties Alliance. And so it is that RCAF USA is again using our third branch of government to protect the rights of independent U.S. cattle producers, particularly their personal property rights. If you would like to support us in this effort, please go to our website at r-cafusa.com and join with us to improve the profitability of independent U.S. cattle producers. So with that, we're out of time. We hope you have a productive week. Thank you and goodbye.